LED, which produce huge energy savings. We have our facilities, right? Low flow toilets and faucets and occupancy sensors. So when you're in rooms, right, the lights sort of go off on their own, and that helps yield savings for the university. I'll just note that prior to this year, all of our utility funds used to be spent centrally at UW System, and now every UW school maintains their own utility fund, and so any savings that is realized, the university gets to keep. So we are now even more in a position to want to reduce our energy consumption, because whatever's left over we get to hang on to. So very much incentivized to turn the lights off when we leave. We do have renewable energy installations on campus, photovoltaics, or the production of electricity from the sun in a couple of places. Sage Hall, the tennis courts. There is some also on the Student Success Center. We don't have that up there. And we have solar thermal panels on 5 buildings. Albee Hall, which helps heat the pool. On Taylor Hall, which is a residence hall that provides hot water for showers. In Blackhawk Commons, that provides hot water for washing dishes. And Sage Hall, again, for some radiant floor heating, but also providing hot water. And then on the heating plant, that preheats the water for the steam system, which is how we heat our buildings. We also have 2 geothermal units on campus, or 2 geothermal systems. The Horizon Village system is a 58-well system, and the Student Success Center is a 56-well system. Our Student Success Center is actually probably one of the more off-the-grid buildings. It basically is entirely heated through the geothermal system and the solar panels. So that one's kind of our closest to sort of being neutral, I would say. Here's a site that you're probably not going to see anymore. As of last year, we switched to 100% natural gas. All University of Wisconsin system schools in 2020 ended a 50-year contract to stop burning coal. So we no longer burn coal. That reduces the emissions from our heat by 50%. And so prior to that, we were burning about 2,000 tons of coal per year. In addition, we mixed that with some refuse-derived paper pellets that were sort of a mix of paper and plastic. You might want to call that sustainable. It was a material that might otherwise be landfilled, and so we were able to mix that in and incinerate it. And that's actually needed by the heating plant for just kind of proper burn. They need to kind of mix some of that refuse in to help with moisture and that sort of thing. So we switched to 100% natural gas. So certainly much cleaner, but I like to say this is a stepping stone, not a solution. We will eventually need to get off of natural gas because I think, as we all know, that is a fossil fuel as well, and there's lots of problems associated with natural gas fracking. Our backup is low sulfur fuel oil. We need to keep a 3-day supply of low sulfur fuel oil, that's a mouthful, on campus at all times, and that's because of curtailment from Wisconsin Public Service. So the utility can cut us off whenever they sort of deem that they need to. That actually happened this past February when we had a cold spell and campus had to switch over to the fuel oil. The reason for
which we always look forward to. And I don't really have any announcements, I guess, per se. There is a sign-up sheet. I know you registered when you the COVID thing, so you have names, but there's another sheet on the chair if you want. If you're interested in getting email notices or our newsletter, or even the wild one if you're not already a member, then that would be a good thing to sign your name to, again, with an email address or a mailing address. And also back there is our most current newsletter. And the only thing coming up yet this year for us is there's a Christmas word count. If you're interested in participating, then the information on how to sign up for that. And then just information about Project Feeder Watch, which is a fun thing to do through the winter, where you just watch from the warmth of your home at the birds at your feeder. And it doesn't take a lot of your time, but it's a fun thing to do. It makes you look at what's really out there, how many of each species. When I started doing this a number of years ago, I was surprised about that. So that's about all
minute. My name is Shannon Davis-Foust. I'm actually here in a couple of different capacities. So for a second, I'm going to put on my Wild Ones hat. This year, I'm the new president of the Wild Ones Fox Valley chapter. So my announcement for Wild Ones is that we look for our annual conference, which is going to be back this year. It's our 25th annual conference. That'll be this January, and it is one of my favorite events of the year in Oshkosh, hands down.
If they're in this room, it's fine, just not there.
Come see it.
Yeah,
We
it'll be
have
easier to
Bill
understand.
King as our guest speaker, which he's very good. So, not Bill Bell. Doug Tellman. Thank you. Yes.
They can pick up flyers.
Oh, yeah, we have flyers here too.
So, okay, cool.
Oh, Chris, would you like to say a few words about the conference? Yeah, if you want to come up, you can do a better job than me.
Hello, everyone. As Shannon mentioned, this is our 25th annual conference for Harmony with Nature. We missed it last year because of COVID, so we're being able to bring it back. It's at the Oshkosh Convention Center. And as she mentioned, we have Doug Tellman coming in person. One of his most recent book is Nature's Best Hope, and that is going to be the topic of his keynote presentation. So, how many have heard Doug or seen him? He's a tremendous speaker. He's entertaining and a wealth of information. What's new this year for our conference, for those of you that have been to our conference before, we're offering it virtually as well as in person. So you can pick up a brochure, or you can go, and it also has our website on it. You can go online and register online, virtually, or in person. It is January 29th, last Saturday of that month. We look forward to seeing everybody. We've changed our format a little bit. Doug will be talking, and then we have another general session speaker, and that's Robert Lindemeyer. And he is the Senior Chief Meteorologist for WTV in Madison. And he specifically is going to talk about climate change in Wisconsin and what we can do to help mitigate it. So it should be a full-day conference. And those that do attend, in the afternoon, we have 4 speakers. You get a choice. I'll select them 2. But for everybody that attends, you'll be able to, when we send out the evaluation, you'll be able to watch videos of all the speakers. So if you're mistaking certain notes, or you had to choose one speaker, and you wish you could have seen the other one in the afternoon, you can do so following the conference. So hope to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I find that really exciting that you can see all the presentations, because I try to sneak sometimes between the presentations. All right, so now I'm going to put on my UWO Oshkosh hat. Back in September, I was working with Lisa and Brad and Anita, and Anita was mentioning that she had this presentation coming up. And we're all very close with Anita. We all love Anita. I like to call her the Rachel Carson incarnate. She is just a fixture on our campus. I see her all the time with that red jacket. And she didn't ever use PowerPoint before, or any kind of electronic presentation method. So she was asking for some help to put the slides together. So I sat down with her one day, and she was all excited. This was way back in September. And I usually start a presentation like the day before. So we shared the slides that we were working on with her, and then the news came that she was unable to present this evening. And so it came down to the one that Lisa, Brad, and I would take her place. And we decided that her heart, she expressed, was really here. She had said that she was thinking about sneaking in the back door just to watch. So she really is here in spirit today with us. We decided that we're just here representing her, so we are nobody's worthy at all. And Anita really is giving this presentation. She's advised all of us a lot on this presentation, and she really is a part of this. This outline actually came from her, and we tried to preserve it as much as we could. So the title is Anita's, From Birds to Bur Oaks, Butterflies to Blazing Star, Prairies to Natural Gardens, Oshkosh Campus Beauty and Success Stories. So I'm going to introduce to you both Brad Spanbauer, who is our Campus Sustainability Director, and Lisa Mick, who is our ground supervisor. They both are extremely knowledgeable about campus, and I'm just a long-time resident on campus myself. So Brad's going to start us out tonight.
Hey, thank you. Make sure this is on. All right, so just want to welcome everybody to our presentation and taking a look at the Oshkosh campus. I think we've got a couple of things maybe, or one or two. Here's a site that you're probably not going to see anymore. As of last year, we switched to 100% natural gas. All University of Wisconsin system schools in 2020 ended a 50-year contract to stop burning coal. So we no longer burn coal. That reduces the emissions from our heat by 50%. And so prior to that, we were burning about 2,000 tons of coal per year. In addition, we mixed that with some refuse-derived paper pellets that were sort of a mix of paper and plastic. You might want to call that sustainable. It was a material that might otherwise be landfilled, so we were able to mix that in and incinerate it. And that's actually needed by the heating plant for just kind of proper burn. They need to kind of mix some of that refuse in to help with moisture and that sort of thing. So we switched to 100% natural gas. So certainly much cleaner, but I like to say this is a stepping stone, not a solution. We will eventually need to get off of natural gas because I think, as we all know, that is a fossil fuel as well, and there's lots of problems associated with natural gas fracking. Our backup is low sulfur fuel oil. We need to keep a 3-day supply of low sulfur fuel oil, that's a mouthful, on campus at all times, and that's because of curtailment from Wisconsin Public Service. So the utility can cut us off whenever they sort of deem that they need to. That actually happened this past February when we had a cold spell and campus had to switch over to the fuel oil. The reason for the 3-day supply is if they shut us off on Friday, we have to make it to Monday. I don't think anybody's delivering oil over the weekend, or at least we don't want to pay for that extra charge. So we want to make it a few days before we really need to use that. The getting off all the equipment that was used for the coal elevator and all this stuff, huge amount of savings, labor time. I know the guys in our heating plant were very happy about that. The equipment all uses electricity, so we're going to see tons of electricity savings in that facility. And then just emissions, cleaner air quality for all of us who are not breathing in the kind of coal ash and other stuff, right? That's spit out from the smokestack up at the top there. All right, so let's get into the grounds. So we first wanted to talk about trees on campus, and certainly starting out with the history of Dr. Schwartz. So he was a biology professor, and Anita had to tell us the story again today because we all could not remember, and luckily she knows. So he was a biology professor in like the 60s and 70s, and essentially ensured that the university was planting lots of trees on campus, and in particular planting a high diversity, sort of a different array of species on campus. And so if you're ever kind of in the area around Halsey, but also over by the Arts and Communications or the theater building, that block has a very, very high amount of diversity of trees. And the reason that was done, so not all of them are Wisconsin native species, but that was done for educational purposes, so that students could learn about different types of trees. They could do sort of taxonomy exercises in biology labs and in botany labs, and they could key out all of these different types of trees and be able to learn about all of the diversity of species that we have, right? So the university sort of became this little arboretum or collection. That was like it's a little tree library, so good amount of diversity, and we can even see that just looking right here. And so I think I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Mess this up, just let you know, this is not my game. You're really good at this, I'm not so much. What we have here is a selection of the different evergreens we have on campus. We've got larch, the yellow one, drops all its needles. And we've got the arborvitae, we've got cedar up on the top. The bottom picture is actually of Shapiro Park, and it's got spruce in there and white pine, and then that is our dawn, one of our dawn redwood. We have 4 of those on campus. What Anita wanted me to tell you about is that the larch and the white cedar, those are huge seed suppliers in the winter for juncos, house and goldfinches, pine siskins. Her and I one day were over by the Shapiro Park, over by the arborvitae, and she was just beaming and chattering at the birds because there had to be 30 to 50 pine siskins in those arborvitae, and she was going nuts. So, and then there's also chickadees that feed on those. They also use them for nesting throughout the summer seasons and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of different diversity and food sources, nesting availability for the birds on campus. I did it right. We have oak. We have several different varieties of oak on campus. This is actually from over by AC. This is what Anita calls our oak opening. So what she wanted to say about this was, these are our legacy trees. This is a view of our past right now. Some of these trees are 300 years old. So if you think back to what that would have looked like 300 years ago, there's no buildings. All you would have had is prairie in there. And so it's a view of what this area used to be. I love that area. It's very shaded, and someday I hope to kind of return it to not the monoculture of turf grass it is, but something a little bit more native. We've got a lot of seasons, of course. We have a lot of seasons in Wisconsin anyhow. But with university, because of the variety of plants, be it the native grasses and perennials, or the trees, the shrubs, you've got the red-tipped dogwood in there, you've got a changing landscape from day to day. We are part of Tree Campus USA. Brad was kind enough to share with me that it's been 11 years. With that comes education, it comes community. We get together with the students and different people from the city to plant trees. Usually it's one day. This year, thanks to the Green Fund, we planted 21 trees, not on the same day. But we did plant, I believe it was 9 trees by the tennis courts that day with several students. I was amazed at how many students showed up. It's a wonderful opportunity for several different aspects of the community, the university community, to get together and share stories. On campus, we have numerous habitats. A few of the ones we're really proud of are the bioswales. Every parking lot has those. Prairies, spring ephemerals gardens, the butterfly garden. We call that, or I call that Anita's butterfly garden. Perennial beds, and we are an edible campus. Our bioswales, like I said, are attached to, I think, all but one parking lot has a bioswale attached to it. These are a means for us to clean the water as it comes out of the parking lot. If there's debris in it, certain maybe, I don't want to say toxic things, but different things that will drain through the modified soils that are in there. Anita pointed out that also it is a refuge. She's come down in the evenings taking her walks. She walks anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day. And she has noticed that juncos and goldfinches will overnight in our bioswales. I think it was last year. Her and I were on the other side of stage, and there's a bioswale there too. We noticed there was a patch of stinging nettle, which we, at first she said, you should probably take this down, and then 2 days later she said, don't cut that down, because it was completely covered in red admiral caterpillar larvae. And so she said, don't, just leave it be. Now, this year she said we're going to have half the size of that grouping, but I mean, it's no hazard to people. Nobody's going to walk the bioswales, so they're not going to walk that patch of stinging nettle, so I don't mind leaving it. We have prairies on campus. These obviously aren't the size of the prairies. They're huge. They run along the Wabash Trail in particular. What I wanted to point out is what we get with our prairies. We always got our caterpillars. The number of pollinators that we have with it comes the seeds, so we've got the birds. I used to try to get rid of all the thistles. I decided I don't mind some thistle because of the down the goldfinch use. So we allow some invaders to come in because there is a purpose to them. So I love my birds. Those are one of my pride and joy, even though we get a lot of complaints about the weeds. This is the Halsey Prairie, runs right alongside the Halsey building. This was put in 2014 by Dr. Brad and Shannon wrote this. We believe it was a biology group, and then there was some professors, and Anita was actually involved with this. At the time, they had used seed, and with the seed came cup plant. You can see the 12 words in there. That has taken over, which is what you see now in 2021. We took out the cup plant. It basically wiped out everything else that was in there. This was done by Shannon's class, her students, removing as much as we could of the cup plant and that kind of thing. So she collected seed from the Fond du Lac campus, and we kind of threw some more seed in there to see what would happen with it. So it's now a new work in progress. We have natural plantings along the river. The big one on top kind of shows you the green of it. But these were taken, the brown ones down, were taken today. That's my dog in the river. He decided that was a good idea to choose the dogs. But we have, we leave the material along the river to keep the geese from coming up. From what I was told prior to me being here, that green field you see up there used to be covered in geese, which left it covered in goose poop, which although it's a nice natural fertilizer, was not a lot of fun for the students to play on. That tree picture on the right, that's a key one. I've gotten grief a little bit from the city about cleaning up our shoreline. But what Anita's noticed about that, there's a lot of trees that are actually down in the water. What those trees are doing is providing shade for the fish. So there's a refuge for the fish there. But what she's also noticed during the summer while being out there, she's seen a green heron out there and kingfishers. And they'll be sitting on those branches looking down into that water and finding its food source. So there's a lot of wonderful things that come with our cover along the river. Anita and I kayak down the river all the time during the summer months, and it's much more enjoyable to look at our side of the river versus the other side of the river. This is the spring ephemeral garden. This was put in 6 years ago. This was the first project my boss ever let me do. I came up with the idea because it was grass and it wasn't growing very well. And I said, let's try something different. And I said, it's a learning institution. Let's learn something. So this bed, there's 2 of them actually, right by Halsey and Harrington. They've got about 25 different varieties of spring ephemeral. Not necessarily ones you would normally all find together, but ones that are native to Wisconsin. Some of them were taken from Neil Harriman's house. The Mayaples and the Southern Seal were actually taken from Neil's property. And that is, hands down, Anita, my favorite place to go on campus in the spring. Every day it's a different view. There's something new coming up. And now it's become kind of self-sustaining, other than the juniper. So Anita also uses this as her juniper nursery. So we've got probably about a dozen native junipers that have started coming up in there. They're probably no more than a couple feet tall, but we keep moving them around campus. So she overtakes everything, which is why this slide exists. So on campus we do have numerous perennial gardens. I could have shown an actual perennial garden, but one of my favorite plants in our perennial gardens is this white one. It's called Montrose White Catmint, or Napita. And if you come, I'm going to say end of July, beginning of August, this is in bloom. And like around 10 o'clock in the morning when there's not too much activity on campus yet, you kneel down by that and all you hear is a hum. And it's all the pollinators. I was out there one day, I counted no less than 25 different varieties of pollinators. I'm talking flies and wasps and bees going all the way from less than half the size of a pea to, the size of my thumb. And in this picture alone, there's probably 10 different pollinators there. Unfortunately, I can't get it any bigger than that, but that's a wonderful plant on campus. The butterfly garden is Anita's butterfly garden. Last year during COVID, everything in there had basically died off because that's where we pile snow. And so we decided that had to be an annual garden. And Anita said, well, how about we throw in some parsley and dill and maybe some zinnias and see what we get. And we did. We got swallowtails. So she wanted to keep it to be just that, butterfly garden. So we added more zinnias, more parsley, dill. We actually added towards the back, you'll see those are salvia, an annual salvia, and we actually had a hummingbird this year on campus that was feeding from those. So she was extremely excited because now it's not just a butterfly garden, it's a bird garden too. We are edible on campus. I've been working very hard to add elements of something purposeful on campus, and so we do have vegetable spaces on garden. We don't advertise them because there's a chance of sabotage, unfortunately. But we have an area up by Polk, we have over by Broomhagen, around Columbus, we have different edible spaces, nursing and student success are going to be new ones. The bottom picture actually is over by student success. There's a grapevine up against the wall, and those are 2 sweet cherry trees. That actual space during COVID, because I didn't have enough staff, was taken over by thistle and crabgrass. And so we are planting sorghum as a means to smother that without using chemicals. So we're going to try a different approach. On top, those are plum and cherry trees, and there's a pear tree in there. We also have apple trees, heirloom apple trees over by lot 11. And then that picture of the wall there, that's actually strawberries. I've been using strawberries as a ground cover. Those are ever-bearing. And it's amazing how few weeds come up, but boy, do the strawberries come up. I got 1 handful out of that bed this year and made a mistake of putting it on social media, and never saw another strawberry after that. We take care of the grounds. Obviously, the turf is an important part of it. It is a great place for students to hang out. Obviously, from this picture, not a great idea once we just sprayed it. You've got people playing in the background on the grass. Apparently, they didn't pay attention to that sign. But it is very high maintenance. I have 3 people 3 days a week mowing and weeding the turf. Brad, what did we figure that cost when we did that proposal? Was that $133,000 a year cost? 110? $110,000 we had kind of figured out it cost a year to maintain the turf on campus. Be it the labor necessary for mowing it, the chemicals needed, the fertilizers needed. It's just expensive. So we are trying to reduce our chemicals by improving the soil conditions itself. So we've been doing a lot of tight gold. We've been doing a lot of mushroom compost. We've been ignoring the dandelions, even though upper management doesn't agree with that approach. So I just come up with excuses why I can't possibly spray at this time, and then just drag my feet on it. So it's working out pretty well at this point. At some point, it'll stop working, unfortunately. We do collect our own water at the grounds department. We have 4 barrels that are attached to our buildings. So this year, I would say 90% of the water that we used on campus as far as watering plants and trees came from our water barrels. There was a sprinkler maybe that ran over once in a while where we came and water those beds, but all the trees were watered every time with our barrels, and those were watered once a week. So we've done very well with the water barrels, and those actually came from room 1. We try to keep everything low maintenance. One of the things that we discovered with our proposal is our prairies cost us about $600 a year to maintain versus the $110,000 it costs us to. Now, mind you, our prairies take up less square footage too, but I can't imagine that costing that much more for maintenance purposes. This is a picture of the apple trees over by lot 11, the heirloom apple trees when we were planting those. We are wildlife habitat certified. This middle picture, I know it looks like dirt. Look at it, it just looks like a big spot. What that actually is a 15 by 10 foot anthill. That is over by Sage Hall. It is hidden behind a bioswale. And I think it's fascinating. I love going there during the summer months because the activity is just, I did have to talk to the biology department and figure out what kind of ants they were. They assured me that they would not be going to the buildings because that was a huge concern. So I don't talk to much, of course I talk to you guys, but I don't tell many people about that one. We do have a resident fox on campus now. It lives over by the tennis courts, Wild Wash Trail along that area. We also have a possum named Blue Chip. We've got woodchucks. We had deer, we had doe and fawn on campus this year. We had some turkeys. So we get a lot of critters. We do provide some habitat. We have wood duck houses. We have 2 screech owl houses. We've got bat houses. That was a green fund proposal. And then we were just recently gifted, that just went on this year, the Purple Martin house that was gifted to us. So we're trying to do our part. And now we go to Brad, who's going to talk about birds.
All right. We see a good amount of bird diversity on our campus. I actually started a little birding group with some faculty friends that we had going for a while called The Flock. And sort of when COVID hit, we stopped meeting as regularly. But I would say, Anita is really our kind of eyes and ears for birds. She knows where stuff's nesting and when they're there and where to find things and how to point things out. So she's really our resident bird expert in maintaining, kind of keeping an eye on the bird houses and nest sites and all that stuff. But, lots of different species, swallows, wrens, chickadees. Like Lisa mentioned, we've got some habitat, provided habitat for them, screech owl boxes, wood duck boxes, other bird houses, platforms. I think Anita said in a typical year, she can spot about 100 species, either on campus or kind of here in eyesight flying over. So I think that's pretty good. I think being along the river certainly helps. She did want to sort of make sure we mentioned we did have a record of a Townsend solitaire, which is a western species, and a long-eared owl. So seeing some things on campus too that are not super common. The image up there is actually a great horned owl, and so I've got that's an image I took one day. I was walking through campus, and it might have been in the afternoon. It was like 1 o'clock, and something just told me to look up into what I think Lisa and Anita call the umbrella tree. It's a big red pine that's kind of been like cut, shaped. The branches have been cut all the way up. Is that a red pine?
I think so. And yeah, it wasn't like we anticipated that it was going to be that. We just removed the dead trees and then suddenly found that we had this humongous umbrella.
Yeah, so all the live branches are on the top. It looks really nice. And I just looked up and there was a great horned owl. We have had bluebirds nesting on campus. And so we worked with Dr. Maguna Khan, who is a biology faculty at Ripon College. She does a lot of work with bird conservation and banding and that sort of thing. So we, all the bluebirds were banded. We had a kind of a fun day just going on. Of course, Anita and others, we all wanted to get in there and see what was going on. So lots of activity on campus and just all, monitor different kinds of species, and every year is different, and that's what's kind of cool and interesting. Something that's a little less cool, but perhaps still interesting and somewhat sad, is a few years ago, some faculty and I received a grant through our Sustainability Institute for our research cluster grant. So this was a grant where faculty from different disciplines had to come together and come up with a project. And so we had folks from biology, English, environmental studies, music, and sustainability. And we did a bird window strike study. Basically looked at 8 buildings on campus and tried to see where are the birds hitting the windows, and not making it. So we started in spring 2017, and we've actually been doing it every spring and a couple of falls since then. We have every intention of continuing to collect data every year. Unfortunately, we found that Sage Hall, which is our LEED Gold building and is supposed to be very environmentally friendly, is not so environmentally friendly to our birds, and I think that's largely due to the way the building is designed and the high amount of glass on the facades. And so that is by far our biggest killer of birds, and so we are mitigating that by, again, a student green fund project to put up a kind of dot pattern cling, a film that will go on the windows. And so hopefully that will help, kind of create a visual barrier for the birds. And so we'll be able to study that as well, get sort of pre and post treatment of the windows to see does that help reduce bird window strikes. So, the sad part is we don't see a ton of robins or house sparrows or starlings, very common things that you can maybe feel a little less bad about. Certainly we don't want any of them to go, but red-breasted nuthatch, gray catbird, an ovenbird. Lisa texted me one day and said, we have a window strike. And it was a turkey that had flown through the window. So this image, the large hole there, if you look at the bottom of the doors open, that's a turkey laying there. And just that morning, I was out collecting data for bird window strikes, and I saw 2 turkeys flying around on campus. And about 8 hours later, Lisa texted me and said, I've got a bird window strike to report to you. We see a lot of warblers. So we really see this, a high incidence of window strikes during spring and fall migration. I would say actually what I find in the literature to be, evident. We experienced this fall. We had a student collecting data on this, and the fall migration is actually far worse. And essentially the reason for that is because you've got yearling birds, first-year birds that are going to be migrating back down. They're very unfamiliar with the territory, right, and they've not made this trip before. And so, they get into this unfamiliar territory, they stop off, and unfortunately, they meet their end. But they're not hard to spot. I can kind of put this up here to show you our method. So we make sure we tie fluorescent string on them so that we know they've been marked, and folks going out every day are not double counting birds. This bird, I found by Reeve Union. They're easy to see. We go out, we try and go out before 9 a.m. every morning for about 2 or 3 weeks. But it's pretty easy to spot birds. And I would say the response we've had for faculty, staff, and students from across all of our campuses who have helped with this, who will report birds to us, send us pictures, send us things via email. I just had a bird hit my window. I'm not sure if it's alive or not, but right, all of these are really good points of data for us to have. And at the Fond du Lac campus just this fall, we actually had a 2-for-1. This male Cooper's hawk was chasing a white-fronted sparrow, and they both hit the window and both did not make it. So you can see, we as humans have modified, our built environment with lots of glass, and it's nice to have the view and see out our windows, right? But there might not be much nature left if we don't do something about, sort of mitigating the effects of what that glass, can do to, especially our kind of avian friends. I also want to mention the Peregrine Falcon program. We've had this we've had Falcon nest box on campus for many, many years. Just a few years ago, the residence life department was feeling a little like, if we want to keep doing this or what's going to happen. And so the Sustainability Institute said, we will sort of become the new financial home and sort of the coordinators of the program. And we get a lot of support from folks like Dana and Greg, who does monitors the Falcon program throughout the state. So we've got a lot of great folks on campus who are allies in this, monitoring the CAM for us, helping with banding, and just getting the word out, right, about making sure that we've kind of got this cool thing, right, this Peregrine Falcon program. One of our females that I think was produced on another site, is that right? She is that nest box name was Green Puff. There's another female named Julia who had a little spar in the spring, and Julia was a little injured, but we think she's okay. But we're thinking Green Puff might be moving back in and nesting for next year. So keep your eyes peeled if you ever want to go to uww.edu/search. We have a brand new website, and our Falcon Camp live stream is right at the top. You can watch it anytime and see what's going on there. All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Shannon to talk about insects.
Thanks, Brad. So, I have been teaching about environmental issues for about 10 years. Talking to Anita Carpenter, besides her, she's incredible at identifying insects. Some of the amazing insects that she's one of them is the common ringlet. There's not a picture of a common ringlet here. That might be a sulfur moth in the right size, I'm not sure. That's the silver spotted skipper in the middle. And then the one on the left is the locust longhorn beetle, which is a picture I actually took this fall because that was a new species for me. I was with Anita, and Anita told me what it was. So as I was saying before, I've been teaching environmental issues for a long time, and when you teach such a depressing topic for a long time, it really sets in and kind of makes you a gloomy person, because there's not a lot of good news when it comes to environmental issues. I tell my students that they're welcome to bring a box of class, because there's something to cry about every day. So the thing is with insects is a study came out recently last year that worldwide there was a 27% decrease in insects by mass. Of course, that's not uniform across all species because we all well know that mosquitoes are doing just fine today. But we also have a fun species on campus, the rusty patch bumblebee. That was just launched last year by one of our biology staff. So we do have some endangered insect species and rare insect species. I can't say the common ringlet is rare, but it's rare for our region. That was something that Anita found. So we also are a monarch waste station, and so we, of course, promote planting a lot of milkweed. You can find milkweed all in the native prairies and also in biospheres. And we have 4 species, the common, swamp, world, and butterfly weed. And recognize that 40 species of insects depend on milkweed. So it's not just the monarchs, there's many other species. And why are bugs so important? So what should we care that we don't have to clean our windshields so much? Well, don't forget, of course, that bugs make birds, right? Okay, they make birds, we know that, that's obvious. Well, and bugs make fish, that's obvious too, right? But what if I said bugs make clean water? That's a little bit more of a jump. But when you recognize how instrumental bugs are when it comes to pollinating, when it comes to spreading seeds, myrmecockery and ants, when it comes to decomposition and breaking down organic material into nutrients for plants to uptake, literally the plants would not exist either without the bugs, and we really need to preserve those bugs. And yes, they do make clean water because we know plants make clean water. And one of the major concepts I teach in my classes is the web of life, to recognize that if you start taking out pieces of the web of life, the bugs, everything's going to fall apart, and it might not be readily apparent. So just this past spring, we installed our very first beehives on campus. We were going to do this the year of the pandemic, and everything got canceled because of COVID. But then the next year, we were super fortunate that we had a second student to come forward and write a green fund proposal and get the funding. This is Mariah. She's since graduated and has gone on to veterinary school, but she's a remarkable young woman. And so we bought the bees and we installed them this spring. And I remember talking to Lisa about this when I first met her many, many years ago, how excited it would be to have bees at campus. And really seemed far-fetched. How are we ever going to do that? But it happened, and we're following the tracks. UWO, you guys ahead of us on this. And what we want to do is become eCampus USA and get that certification. Now, if you know anything about honeybees, they're not native. So how does that help nature? Right? What does that help with? Well, if they're not native to the Americas, well, by focusing is USA certified, we have to meet all sorts of criteria. And it's not just for honeybees, but it's also for promoting habitat. It's not just suitable for honeybees, but of course for many other insects. So all sorts of native habitat. So even though that the honeybees aren't native, they're an umbrella species. Everybody recognizes honeybees, and honeybees there's a lot known about them because we essentially farm them. Honeybees are considered livestock, so we know they're in great decline, and they give us an indication of how much decline our native bees are in. So by pursuing Campus USA, we're putting in native habitat, or we're promoting native habitat, and we're also promoting educational programs to teach people about the value of pollinators and other insects. So just by pursuing this and having those bees on campus, it'll lead us even further into sustainability and having a healthy habitat on campus. So one of the last things that Anita and I talked about when we were assembling this presentation was one of the biggest problems is getting people to accept this vision of sustainability. It is not yet our cultural norm to accept native plantings. People don't recognize their value. They will describe them as an eyesore. That's evident if you drive on just about any road. You will see that the majority of people maintain their yards as lawn lawns, or if they have plants that are non-native plants.